Hi, everybody. Welcome to the show. I'm your host, Chris Gennaro. My co-host is Rizk, and today we have Nick from Pyrolatrous. How you doing?
Doing well. How are you?
Good. So we want to check in with your band, and in talking to you, discovered some news that you had moved to Colorado.
Yeah. I'm now a Colorado resident, live in Denver. Yeah, man. I lived in New York City for 17 years. I love the city. I love New York. Will always have love in my heart for it. But over the years, I mean, it's an abusive, oppressive relationship. You know, it's like a toxic relationship with really good sex, and I just feel like New York kept. You'd always be like, fuck, I can't do this anymore. It's so stressful. Oh, but it's so good. And then like, oh, maybe it can work. And then, and then finally, just like with the pandemic hit, I'm a guitar tech. And so my industry just was shot, and career, I don't know if I have a career anymore. And so my girlfriend and I, we were like, we got to get out of there. We need some nature. We love to hike. We love to be in the woods. What makes sense? And we started looking, different Portland, Austin, like a couple different cities that we really like. And Denver checked off a lot of marks, and can keep the band together. Like Lev, the drummer, his fiance Lauren plays in that band Dreadnought, who lives here. So he's in Denver all the time, and we can keep going with the band, and it's just beautiful landscape, and it's cheaper than New York, and 300 days of sun a year. So yeah.
So that's cool. But the two other members, are they still in New York?
They're still in New York. Yeah, Joe Marola plays bass, and Nolan Voss plays guitar. Nolan and Lev also play in Anacon together. So they're both still in New York. And, since the inception of the band, like I started the band just like out of, my old band was I played in Hull, and, we broke up in 2015, but, nearing the end, it was like 2012, and I was just, I love those dudes. I love that band. We're still great friends. But just over the years, we were together for 12 years or whatever it was. And, just like different creative differences, and like growing together. And I started just needing something else, and wanted to play like something that was just more like black and death metal oriented. And so I kind of started the band like just as a solo project. And, I wrote 3 songs or something. And then I had my old drummer, his name's Joel Stallings. He played in Defeatist, and he plays in Radiation Blackbody. We used to be in a band years ago called Reservoir. So I reached out to him, and he tracked 3 of the songs with me. I played all the instruments and did the vocals, and he played the drums. And then he was just like, it's great, but it's just too black metal for me. He's more into grind, and like, so at that point I just wanted to keep going. And I reached out to Lev Weinstein and Krallis and many other bands, Woe and Anacon and Garyon.
Oh, he plays in so many bands. That's a busy guy.
He's just a beast. He's amazing. And he's always looking to play in new projects. And I sent him the demo, and he loved it. And so he and I wound up writing 6 more songs together. And then, so we tracked all 9 songs in 2015. And so that on that album, on Tenorol, our first album, that I did all the instrumentation and vocals and samples, and he played drums. And and then so after that, I think 2016, we were like, okay, we want to put a band together. And like, Joe and Nolan are wonderful players and great friends, and reached out to them, and they were super stoked, and they learned the songs immediately. Their retention is amazing. Just took the album, listened to it, came to practice the first day, and I was like, you guys have any questions? You need me to show you any riffs? And they're just like, no, and they played the whole thing.
Wow. That is super impressive, yeah.
Yeah, it's like ridiculous. Like my mind doesn't really work that way. Like
Mine neither. It takes me a while to learn stuff. I can't just learn it like that. I can't.
yeah, like I can like write a song. Like I feel like, it's like look like where your fine points and where your weak points, and like, I feel like I like a good songwriter, like over the year I've like lots of experience with it, and at this point in my life I can be like, okay, like I can write a song. I'm not a great soloist, and my retention is kind of poor. I have to like I just learned differently, but these dudes just like took it on. We became a band and just quickly like really vibed with each other. Really love those dudes. We're all on the same page. And then, so Hull was just sort of like coming to an end, and and it was just time after like 12 years. And then so this band just kind of like took shape, and we released the album in 2017 on Gilead Media. And then from that point on, started playing some shows, did a tour around Migration Fest, and then started working on this new album, Inveterate. And then we just spent the entire year last year, I mean, between Lev playing in like 4,000 bands and, me always being on the road as a guitar tech, when I was in town or he was available, we were just writing. So we played one show, I think, in 2019, and then recorded this album in December of last year. Super stoked on it, super proud of it. And, we had Sanford Parker mix it, and then we were just about to like get into the mastering and the artwork, and the pandemic hit, and then it just, everything sort of fell apart, and the album is kind of still, it's still not released yet. And we're kind of like, okay, when do we release it? And, what are we going to do about mastering and all that other shit?
Yeah, I was starting to feel embarrassed because you're talking about the new album, and I'm like, I think I missed that on the bandcamp page. I hope I didn't.
You didn't miss it.
It's not up there.
I was gonna say that would have been a bad snafu, right?
Yeah. You're a horrible interviewer.
You're a horrible interviewer. No, but actually,
horrible.
So then, wait. It's a question then. So, like, was it going to come out on Gilead as well, or no?
Yeah, so we recorded the album, and loved it, and we're like spent a year at least on. I mean, prior to that, I think I started writing for this like right after Tenor came out, 2017, and then the dudes kind of started learning off like the demos, because like I'll write all the songs as skeletons, I program the drums, and then take it to the dudes, and then everyone, we work out the harmonies and solos and whatever. And so by the time they started sort of like getting into it, learning it, it was like the entirety of 2019, recorded this album, super proud of it, recorded with one of my best friends, Brett Romness, and at an amazing studio.
Actually, I know that guy too. We had this conversation.
Oh, right.
In Florida. Yeah. We used to like go to shows together. So that's crazy that you were good friends with him. Sorry to interrupt, but then I wonder if you were ever at any of the shows and I just didn't know you then or whatever. It's weird.
Probably. I mean, I was at all the time. I mean, it's crazy. Like the metal scene is so incestuous, like, and Brett actually was the first drummer of Hull. And then in 2004, the Movie Life like broke up, and I Am the Avalanche started, and they snatched Brett away from us, and and then we got Jeff, and the history, whatever. But we remained, we're like great friends, and he's a wonderful engineer. Recorded this album, beautiful, amazing studio called Barbershop Studios, and and then like we were like, okay, we want to get this out. We're super proud of it, And I reached out to Adam from Gilead, and he was like, I love you guys. I want to do it, but like I'm not going to be able to put out another album like until probably October of 2020. Like I'm so backed up. And we're like, fuck. And we started reaching out to different, like Profound Lore, whatever. And then the pandemic hit, and everyone's just like on standstill. So as of now, we're not exactly sure what's going to happen, but like I will say Adam is a wonderful guy. I love his label. He treats his bands super well. And so like, you know, I would be totally happy to put it back out, put this album out on Gilead. So
cool.
Yeah, I mean, that's got to be your worst nightmare if you're running a label and the pandemic hits, because I mean, that's where you're selling the CDs, you know, especially being an indie band. It's doing the shows, generating the buzz, you know, and I'd hate to release an album and then by the time you can support it, you know, it's like, oh yeah, that album's 6 months old, you know?
Yeah. I mean, that's what we were like, well, fuck, what do we do? I mean, like, we could put it out and like, I'm sure people, you know, people really want new music right now. And, you know, and it's not like, you know, like I'm politically, like, not to go down that, but I'm like a total anti-capitalist. So I'm like, fuck it, I don't care. Like, I'm not worried about like, not like we're going to make money anyway. We're an underground band, but like, I'm not worried about that. I'm not worried about like touring off of the, you know, but like, but at the same time, it's kind of like, well, you're super proud of something and you put in so much work and like blood, sweat, and tears into it. And like, on one hand, I'm kind of like, oh, like I do this out of love and passion, and like to play with my great friends that I love and play the music that I love. That's like all that really matters. But at the same time, it's like, yeah, like I want to get out there and perform, and I want people to like, you know, if I can help somebody with my music, I mean, that's like, I've always said, like, if one person likes what I do, I mean, I've done something well, you know, like if I can like help someone, like, you know, and so yeah, of course it's like, yeah, we would love to like get out and tour on it and support it. And, but then like you said, it's like, yeah, then what do you do? It's like this, you know, by the time you can get out there and tour and support on this album that you put out, like the album is what, 6 months, a year, 2 years, who knows how long this is going to be.
Yeah.
So now we're just kind of like, I don't know, we're just kind of on hold, you know. We're like, I reached out to, Jazz Helena, who did the artwork for the first album, and she's doing the artwork again for the second one, and so she's getting started on that, and we're working out mastering now and just taking it slow, and we're kind of paying for everything ourselves, and yeah, more will be revealed, I suppose.
Cool.
So where would be the home base of the band? Is it Colorado now? Are those guys going to come to you or you to them, or how is that going to work?
Well, we don't really know yet. And we just like, so we all, like I said, we all love each other and we really want the band to continue. And like many bands do, you know, like for example, I was saying, I'm a guitar tech, and one of the bands I work for is Not a Surf. And I love those guys. They're some of the best dudes on earth. And they, you know, they started their band in like 92 or whatever in Williamsburg, Brooklyn. And now at this point, they're in their like mid 50s. And the singer Matthew lives in England. Bass player Daniel is in Ibiza. They're, you know, Louis in Austin. Fucking Ira is in Florida, and then Doug is in New York. So they're in all different places throughout the world, basically, and they still make it work, and they send each other files and whatever. So like in 2020, you can make things happen.
Yeah,
we're definitely a more organic band and kind of like analog, and so it's like we definitely work best when we're together. But you know, I will say, you know, like I was saying in the beginning, like Lev and I kind of started the band, and we sort of formulate and like steer the ship. And so the fact that, you know, Lev is basically going to be in Denver, you know, a week every month, he and I can get together, you know, I'll continue writing songs, like demoing songs, sending it to the guys. When he's in Denver, I think we're going to maybe get a cheap studio and start rehearsing and sort of like working out the songs like we did originally. And then the other dudes, you know, when Lev goes back to New York, the three of those guys can get together. You know, we can send each other files, and then just like if we do a tour or do an album, you know, it's like I'll fly into New York and we'll rehearse for a week and then go do our thing, you know, and just like try to be adults and like make, you know, let technology work for us now. I mean, we have this technology at our fingertips, so we can kind of try to utilize it, you know.
Cool.
Yeah, it's funny. One of my friends actually moved to Colorado, and we were talking, maybe about jamming sometimes, and he was like sending me these figures on latency and stuff, and I'm like, I don't know, like if the live thing would really work from
Yeah.
that far away. I think it would have to be like kind of what you're talking about, more of a file swap situation.
Yeah, and like my whole life, I mean, I've been playing in bands forever. I mean, shit, my first band, I think I was like 14 or something. And my whole life, whether it was like punk or metal bands or whatever, it's like it's always been like, for me it was like very organic, analog, dudes get together, we have fun. We got together and like, we would just drink some beers, smoke some weed or whatever, and then create what we created. And so yeah, I mean, this is going to be like there's so many new things right now with with the world, and
yeah,
just like how everything's going in the pandemic, and it's just kind of like it's sort of survival mode to a lot of different extents, and like this is one of them that I'm sort of like dumping into that category of like, we really love each other and want to make it work, and like so we're gonna try to make it work and see how it goes.
Cool.
Sounds like you might need. Whenever I hear like the spiel about people loving each other, I'm thinking, oh, here's where they're going to tell me they're going to therapy.
Yeah. Fucking Metallica.
No.
No. I mean, like seriously, yeah. I mean, we've done one tour as a band. It's really tough with like the other guys in bands, different bands, and me always on the road touring. And so we had, we played Migration Fest in 2018, and we put a tour together around that, and that was the only tour we've done. And it, honestly, like it was like the best, I think probably the best tour I've ever done in my life, like in my own band.
Awesome.
Yeah, and everything was just smooth, and we got along really well, and like we just like had tons of fun playing together on stage. And so there's none of that. I don't think there's any of that like crazy therapy type shit with with this band. Right? Yeah.
So let's talk about like what to be expect. I mean, I know we don't have a date for the new album, but what can we expect from it? Like I listened to Tenroll and a few times, but like there's some different stuff on there. So I was curious, like if you're gonna bring in any, like there's some tracks were a little bit doomier, especially sort of mid-album. There was even one that was kind of like a little stoner rock-ish.
Yeah, that definitely comes from I mean, like I'm like straight up like Black Death Doom, that's kind of like my Sabbath, so like I don't know, like, and I grew up with like punk and like crust punk and grindcore, and so it's like it's weird because a lot of those elements come into play with my writing. And so this album definitely kind of has all those sort of elements. I mean, there's like Slayer parts, there's like there's tons of blasting obviously with Lev, and Immortal is one of my favorite bands, Death is one of my favorite bands. There's like a lot of that kind of influence. And then this album is I feel like Tenroll was a bit maybe more sort of straightforward, and that's kind of with Hull, everything was so progressive and so like overthought, and that was, I think, what made that band, I mean, to me, great, what made that band great. But it was also fucking, just after so many years, it was just like, oh my God, like I just want to write a song, and like, so Tenroll was definitely more just like straight up, like I just want like brutality, and this album is like, I mean, totally brutal. I mean, I don't think there's like one clean guitar on the album. It's just all distorted, brutal. But it's definitely a bit more, it's a bit more in depth and a bit more, I would say progressive in the sense, not like in the sense of like progressive rock, but progressive in the sense of like the actual term progressive, and a bit more technical. But yeah, there's all those elements. There's definitely like punk elements and like mid tempo and blast beats and like just all of the elements of music, grindcore, of shit that I love. Like Assuck is one of my favorite bands in the world, you know, so it's sort of like a mixture of all of that, all of my influences coming out.
How many tracks on the new album?
How many tracks on the new album? I can't, it's so fun. I've had so much shit in my head this last like 6 months. It's been insane. And I literally just moved. So I think there's 7 tracks on the new album. Yeah. I think 7. Yeah.
So how did you get into becoming a guitar tech? Like I assume by playing in bands and stuff, you know, you network and you meet people, and you know, people have needs, obviously.
Yeah. So I mean, like I said, I started my first band at 14. I've been playing in bands forever and touring and like guitar, and like that's my whole life. And I went to school for audio engineering, you know, and I had done some engineering. I worked like at the Acheron. I did some work at St. Vitus and Music Hall of Williamsburg. And I was front of house and monitor engineer and stuff for a while. And I definitely prefer studio engineering to front of house to live. But anyway, so I was in school for audio engineering, and I took some basic electronics classes, and which sort of sparked my like interest, like. You know, I was like, man, I've been playing guitar my whole life. How do I not know how to work on my own guitar? How do I not know how to set up my own guitar? So I started like tinkering, reading books, like reading Stu Mac, like watching YouTube tutorials, and like working on my own guitar. And then I would just like post pictures of it. And just from like the little bit of notoriety that Hall had, I started having people reach out, be like, oh, like you do guitar work. Can you fix like a pot, you know, my volume pot or whatever? And I'd be like, yeah. And I would take their guitar and I would like learn how to do it, teach myself how to do it, and just kept doing it and posting and kept doing it. And then at one point, I think I can't even remember. One of my first guitar tech gigs was not a surf show. My friend Rush, who is actually, oddly enough, he's the monitor engineer of Portugal the Man now, who I primarily work for now. But years ago, Rush, he lived in New York at the time, and he reached out and he was like, hey man, like, can you guitar tech for Not a Surf? Like I did like a weekend with them one time. He's like, but I'm an engineer. I'm not really a guitar tech. And like, they need a guitar tech. And I was like, I'm not a guitar tech. And he was like, dude, you tour, you know how to set up gear, you know how to work on guitars. Like you're a guitar tech. Like, you know how to like interact with bands. Like you're a guitar tech. And I was like, yeah, I guess I'm a guitar tech. So like I bought a tech box, and I did that gig, and just like little by little, like slowly it just started growing and started getting more gigs. And one thing I'll say is like a negative attitude on the road is just tour cancer. You know, it's like total tour cancer. So like, you know, you're on the road with people and you're stuck in a bus or a van or whatever for a certain amount of time. Like you just really learn how, like you really have to compromise, and you really learn how to get along with people. And so, you know, I'd say 85% of the job is getting along with people and the other crew. Like, even if you don't really know what you're doing, if people like you, they're like, oh, this dude's great. Like, I'm going to bring him back and we'll teach him whatever, or, you know. And I've seen I've seen amazingly talented like engineers or like lighting directors or whatever, amazing talent, and they're horrible fucking people and they don't get called back. So anyway, so it was like, just little by little and like getting along and whatever. And my name would get out, and then a different manager would be like, oh, I need a guitar tech. And the guy would be like, oh, I know this dude based in New York, whatever. So it's just started growing. And then over the years, like, I mean, at this point, you know, I've worked with like Graham Nash. I worked with Greg Allman. I've done a tour with Good Charlotte. I've Deer Hunter. I mean, I work for years with Gojira. And like I said, Nada Surf and Blind Melon, Portugal the Man are my main bands now. But actually in 2018 was like a dream come true, because I grew up, since I was like 14, one of my favorite bands in the world was Propagandhi. And through the Gojira tour manager, Taylor, he's Canadian, and he, Propagandhi needed a guitar tech for a European tour. And he reached out to me and he was like, do you think you can do this? And I like, just at the prospect of like the idea of touring with like my favorite band when I, for years when I was a kid, like they were like my favorite band, like I kind of teared up, I was just like, this is fucking amazing. This is like a dream come true. And then I wound up getting the gig and it was awesome. And those dudes are great. And like, it was kind of like, I was, I had to sort of hold back this, like me being like a fanboy and like a kid, like, and having to be like a professional adult, and, but yeah, I mean, it's like, it's taken me to amazing places. Like, I'm so fucking grateful, like getting to like travel the world and work on guitars and gear. And, like on days off, you stay sometimes in like 6-star hotels, and then you can like, you can like plan like vacations around, like you end in one tour with Gojira. We did like 2 weeks in Europe, and then we had a week off. And we were supposed to, the following week, we were doing a main support to Iron Maiden in Madrid. And so the rest of the crew, whatever, they flew home for the week, and then they flew back to Madrid. And so I reached out to Daniel, the bass player from Nada Surf, who lives in Ibiza. And he was like, anytime you want to come. He's got this fucking amazing farmhouse on like this beautiful island in Spain. And he was like, come stay with me, So like we ended the tour in Paris. I got a cheap ticket. I flew to Ibiza. I stayed with him for a week. I went like snorkeling and cliff jumping and like all this fucking awesome shit. And then I flew to Madrid and did this like show with Iron Maiden. It's just like those kind of things are just like, it's so awesome, like so grateful.
Awesome. That sounds nice, man. Damn.
Yeah, no, it's totally, and I do have to say, like, so I guess some people like are indifferent, with how they would approach it, but like for me, I've been sober for 11 years. I had like a really bad drug and alcohol problem, and from getting sober, just like little by little, like that's really enabled me to get to the place that I've been, that I'm now at, and that's just like so much gratitude, because honestly, like I was getting really bad and getting into heroin and all that shit. And I really feel like I would be dead if I continued to use drugs and alcohol. But instead, like now I'm like able to live this, I mean, pre-pandemic, but live this like fucking amazing life that I'm super grateful for. So yeah. And then, that took me to, I was mentioning before the interview started, but like, just making friends with touring over the years. And my great friend, Ian, who owns a tour bus company, he's fucked from the pandemic. So he's doing like a shelter in place moving with his tour buses now. And so we were able to move in a tour bus to Denver.
Wow.
Yeah.
Well, that is crazy to turn your tour bus business into a moving business, right? I mean,
yeah, he's just doing anything to survive right now. He's got this fleet of tour buses, and he's just like siphoning money. And so we like worked it out, and he lives in Vegas, and I called him one day out of the blue, be like, dude, I've been trying to get quotes on U-Haul and pods, and this shit's so expensive and whatever, wanted to pick your brain. And he was like, actually, I have a bus in Connecticut that I have to get back to Vegas. If you fly me to Connecticut, like pick you up in Brooklyn, drive down to Maryland to pick up your girlfriend's stuff, and then drive you out to Denver. And like, we worked out a cost, and it was awesome. We had like a driver, he helped us move, watched movies and hung out with our cats in a tour bus. Like, it's going to Denver, So,
pretty awesome.
Yeah, that is cool. So what does your girlfriend think when you're jet setting around the world? Does she get to come sometimes? I mean, I can't imagine that would work really in a tour bus with the band, but
Yeah, I mean, bands do it like Portugal the Man, for example, like the singer John and backup singer Zoe, they're married and they have a daughter together, and they'll bring her on tour and whatever. And definitely sometimes some bands, like they'll travel with their significant others and whatever. Crew, no, that's kind of unheard of. I have had situations where like girlfriends in the past, met me, like I ended a tour and wherever, and like I flew them over, and then we had a little vacation or whatever. And, but yeah, I mean, I will say over the years, just like the life that I've chosen, like with like playing in bands and touring and as a guitar tech and whatever, it definitely, you first start dating somebody, and I feel like it's kind of like one of those things where it's like, oh, that's so cool. It's so cool that you do that. And it's like, I guess one of the things that like maybe attracts them or something, but then over time you start establishing this relationship and like, fall in love, and then you have this relationship, and then it sort of acts in reverse, and has become an issue in the past. My current girlfriend is awesome. She's amazing, and she's super understanding. And she actually, she was an Irish dancer who toured with Lord of the Dance for years. And so she actually has tons of experience like touring and living in a tour bus. So she like gets it, you know what I mean? And, yeah. And like these days I'm 41, like I love touring, but like, at one point in my life, like the idea of like being on the road 250 days a year, fucking awesome. At 41, I'm like, 2-week tour, great. Like anything over 3 weeks, I'm just like, oh man, I just want to be home with my girlfriend and my cats and just like chilling, But
do you think you would gravitate towards like older bands as opposed to younger bands? Because I would have to think, I've never been on tour, but I can't. I've got to imagine that could be very different between like some bands that go out and maybe are like into partying all the time, and then others, like you mentioned, who are like literally have their kid on tour.
Yeah. I mean, that's a good question. To answer that question, I would say at this point, older bands. I mean, they, like Not a Surf, for example. I mean, they've been in it for like, their hit was popular in 1996. They've been around for years. They're in their mid 50s. They have families. Like some of the dudes like have their beers and whatever, maybe drink a wine at night, but like they're chill, they're nice. They don't fucking party. Like, and the partying thing it's fine. Like Portugal the Man, they party and it's fun. We have tons of fun. Yeah. Like my sobriety thing isn't even an issue anymore. Like it doesn't bother me at all. If people are like partying, I'll hang out as long as I'm like comfortable or like I'm having fun. And then at some point, like if just too many people keep repeating the same stories or whatever, I'm like, all right, cool, I'm going to my bunk later. And so like whatever, like I've gotten to a point where like I know how to navigate either situation. And to be honest, it's like as a career and as my job, it's kind of like, okay, what are the bands that have a budget? It's like, am I a fan of like U2? Fuck no. But like if like, for example, like I got an offer to like tech for U2, fuck yeah. Like, you know what I mean? Like those are the bands that are going to treat you really well. They have the budget and they've been in it for years and they know how to do it. It's a well-oiled machine. And that's kind of like my preference. And honestly, those are the bands that really have a budget anyway to have a crew. You know what I mean? Like, and there's other bands that I love, like Propaganda. Like, I definitely took less than my day rate because I was like, I'm not touring with Propaganda, or like I've been on tour with like my really good friends, Car Bomb. Like they're really good friends of mine. Eli, the drummer, is one of my best friends. And I've done a few tours with them, did a tour. Actually, we did a tour together in Europe when they were touring with Gojira. And that's how I met the Gojira crew. And that's how I got the job with Gojira. But yeah, like bands like that, like I'll like, yeah, like I'll be like, I love you and I'm going to go out with you and I'll whatever, if pay me what you can. And, you know, and then some bands I'm like, you got to fucking pay me 4 times my day rate to go out. Like, you know what I mean? Like, so it all kind of depends. But.
Yeah, I mean, going back to the budget, I mean, at least if they have a budget, you know that they have people who are, you know, have their own jobs and they're not going to be asking you to like do stuff that's not in your wheelhouse or that you're not really being paid for. I mean, I have to imagine that does happen once in a while. If you go, you know, with a low budget band or something, it would be like, hey, can you lug some shit or, you know, do some other stuff.
Yeah, totally. And, you know, like there's some bands, like I did a couple tours with Ben Howard from the UK. And that was one of the most extravagant tours I've ever done. I mean, the budget was so big. Like they literally had a catering crew that toured with them that had their own bus. Whoa. that cooked us breakfast, lunch, and dinner. Not only did they cook us breakfast, lunch, and dinner, but you had a menu you could choose from for breakfast, lunch, and dinner. You know, and like the day rate was amazing, and like they really treated their crew well. And like days off, you were staying in 6-star hotels, and like, you know, that was like a stadium type tour. And so yeah, I mean, as a crew member, that's much what I would much prefer to do something like that as opposed to, you know, being the anti-capitalist that I am. But like, you know, whatever, it's definitely sounds hypocritical, but like, but yeah, you know, like to be able to like, be taken care of like that. And when a band, you know, really takes care of their crew, as opposed to just like I've done years and years and years of like squalor tours, like my own bands, like sleeping on punk floors that were like trash everywhere and fucking bed bugs and like, you know, sleeping in a van and, you know, like, and that shit is fun. And it's like, I'll do that. Like when Pyrolatrous did the tour in 2018, I mean, that's how we toured basically. With the exception of sleeping on punk floors. I mean, now at my age, I'm like, I'm not doing that anymore. But yeah, we stayed at friends' houses and that was fucking wonderful. But like, you know, I'll tour, I'll do a punk tour for my own band if I'm able to like reap the benefits of like hanging out with my friends and performing on stage. Obviously, like you know, like I'll pay the price in the other area, but like if I'm working, as at this point, I like to consider like a skilled technician, you know, then yeah, like, you know, like in any job, it's just like pay your workers what they're worth, you know, and like really take care of your workers. So.
Have you ever been able to turn any of those networking things into a cool show for Pyrolatrous or you know, open up for a band that maybe, you know, or at a show that you wouldn't normally have thought you would have gotten?
Yeah, actually, well, okay, so sort of from guitar teching, not particularly, because like these underground metal bands, like usually the bands I tour with are kind of like indie bands or bands that have a budget, and so like we're like the opposite musically from Pyrolatrous. But as a hired gun musician, so in 2010 I did a European tour playing bass with Jarbo, and we did a month. So we did a month in Europe, and like all the rest of the band members were in like Fade Kiner played keys. He was in Batilis and in like a band called Inswarm, and he's doing his own solo project now. And like Eric Wonder from Cobalt was in the band, whatever. So like each of the members kind of had their own bands. And then like when that tour was over, when Jarbo played in Brooklyn, I did like a double header where like Hull got to open for Jarbo. I did another tour playing guitar with Zeal and Ardor. That was in 2017. And actually Lev and I both did it. Lev played drums. I played guitar. Dana Schechter, who's now playing in Swans, played it, bass. And that was kind of like another, like Zeal and Ardor got this like they got Psycho Las Vegas, and the band was too new, and they're based out of Switzerland, and so Manuel, the singer, is the only member he's a dual citizen of the U.S. and Switzerland, and the rest of the band members were Swiss. And so they got this offer they couldn't refuse, but the rest of the band was Swiss and they couldn't get their visas in time. And so they were like, we can't refuse this. So we need to put together a band. The management was like, we need to put together a band, a backing band, basically. Like Manuel's the main dude, and based in New York. And management, because of like other things that I've done, I got called, and like I reached out to Lev and asked him if he would do it, and then we went up, and so we learned all the songs, and we did like 4 shows. We did like an LA show, a Chicago show, Psycho Las Vegas, and then we did a New York show. And so Pyrolatrous got to open. Like I asked Manuel, I was like, Lev and I were both in the, we're like, can our band open? He was like, of course. Another one that I did, so I played bass in Japan with Shai Hulud in 2016.
Okay.
And that was a fucking crazy story because like, so I was at this wedding in Oklahoma. It was like a Saturday night, and I get this Facebook message from my friend Josh, who was playing guitar in Shai Hulud at the time. And he was like, hey man, you think you could learn 15 songs on bass and be on a plane to Japan to play 5 shows on Monday? And it was Saturday night, and I was like, yes. Like I was like I had never been to Japan. I grew up in Florida, and when I was 18, like I listened to Shai Hulud.
Yeah,
and I was like,
I was big into Shai Hulud at that age as well.
Yeah, so like and so I was like, I'm not saying no, but I said yes, and then I was like, how the fuck? Because I guess they had a problem with their bass player, and whatever, last minute, and we need a bassist. And so I was like, their songs are fucking technical, and so I agreed to do it. The following morning, Sunday, we flew from Oklahoma back to New York. I landed, took a taxi home, dropped off my shit. My girlfriend was awesome and like did my laundry and like cooked me some meals, and like I went straight to the studio and I started like writing notes and just listening and trying to get my head around the songs. And the following morning, Monday morning, I was back at JFK and flying to Japan. And it was like straight out of a movie. We landed Japan. We had like a day and a half before the first show. And so I sat with Matt, the singer and guitar player, and he was like, okay, so like I'll show you the root notes. He's like, we'll turn you down in the mix. We need like a token white dude with tattoos to like fucking, he was like, just need you to go crazy on stage. I was like, I can do that. And I learned the song. I mean, we did 5 shows. There was like 3 shows in Tokyo, 1 up north in Sendai, and 1 down south in Kyoto. And by the end of the 5th show, I knew the set.
You're like, I finally learned this stuff.
But like it was fucking crazy because so I wrote this like all these crazy notes, right? And I had like, it was like, okay, this song starts on A, for example, and and so it was like this combination of, I had my notebook up on my amp so that people couldn't see it with a little stage light. So I had to turn around, look at my notebook. Then I would have to listen to the rhythm guitar player and listen to the drummer to stay on the beat, because it's always like you got to start and stop the song at the same time, because that's the main thing, right? So I had to make sure. So it's just, my brain was exploding from thinking. So, and then on top of it, perform, like go nuts, like, because hardcore dudes in Japan just fucking go crazy and they want to see the show. So like, so we're like performing, and by the end of each show, my brain, I was so tired just from like jet lag and then overthinking, like just from like trying to like concentrate the whole time. But yeah, I mean, so that was a long tangent on that. The Shai Hulud thing didn't actually end in one of my bands like getting a show or whatever, but it was definitely like a crazy story that I was like, throw that in there.
No, that's a good story. I know, Josh Lozano.
Yeah.
That's pretty wild though. Like, yeah, growing up listening, and then it's pretty surreal playing in the group, right? I mean, I've never had that experience. I imagine it's pretty surreal.
Yeah, I mean, it was crazy. It was like playing, you know, with Jarbo. Same thing. We were playing like Neurosis Jarbo songs that I was like fucking love, and with Shai Hulud, like playing these songs that I was listening to like as a hardcore kid in Florida at 18. You know, so it was super surreal, and it felt like out of a movie. And yeah, I mean, it was awesome, and just like you know, like I was saying, just like total immense gratitude, and you know, with everything going on with the pandemic and politically and like all that shit is just like trying. I've been just trying to, yeah, and it's a really depressing time for a lot of people, and like I'm trying to just stay as positive as I can, and like keep that like grateful mindset, you know.
Cool, but you're definitely committed to doing a third album at some point with Pyrolatrous and Latros. Sorry.
Yeah, that's all right. Yeah, it's kind of a dumb word. Yeah, I mean, yeah, I would love to keep it going. Like I said, like I love the music, I love the band members, and you know, just getting settled. It was just such like a brutal. It's been like just like a brutal 6 months, and it's finally like getting here to Denver and finally getting organized. And I'm like, I finally have space, and I'm like building a shop in my own house to do guitar work. And I said like the last, you know, we moved here, landed on the 2nd, on the 3rd, we went out and bought, you know, a 4Runner, like we needed a vehicle, and got that all legal. And then like since then I've been just like opening boxes and organizing and building my shop and like building my workbench and hanging fucking TV, you know, like, and so like just like I haven't really had a chance to think about music or like pick up my guitar in a while. You know, at the beginning of the pandemic, I was you know, I didn't have to work, and it was still like new, and I had this creative, so I basically had demoed an entire new album. So like there's like I have demos basically of like an entire third album, that at this point, you know, it's been so long since the beginning of the pandemic that I started writing that stuff that like, I mean, I would literally have to go back and completely reteach myself how to play these riffs in order to like learn stuff and like teach the dudes and whatever. But yeah, it's kind of great that like, I did have that time that, you know, and at that, like the way I work creatively is always just like ebbs and flows, peaks and troughs. And like, you know, some people like Krauss, they're just constantly prolific, and like I don't get like that. Like I'll go through like a couple months of like just being like super creative and working on demoing every day and writing, and then I can go 2 months, 6 months, a year without like even desiring to pick up my guitar, you know. So yeah, so we kind of have this like 7 or 8 like new songs beyond Inveterate that we can eventually start working on once I kind of like really get settled and we figure out like how this process is going to go with with me living, you know, in Denver and those dudes in New York. So
Sure. And Denver is a good city though. I mean, it's a good metal scene in Denver, you know, it's a good metal scene.
yeah. I mean, that was the other thing that checked off the boxes. Like I know the Primitive Man dudes. I know the Blood Incantation dudes. We've already like gotten together and hung out a bit while I've been here. And it's just really nice. Like, I mean, that's such a great thing. Like I was saying earlier, like especially the metal scene is like pretty incestuous. And like when you're in it, you're engulfed in it. And then like with touring over the years, you just get to know so many great people and so many great places. And so yeah, so I had already kind of I have like a little bit of a base here, you know. Dreadnought, like I said, we Lev is obviously he and Lauren are together, and we had played a show on that Pyrolatrous tour in 2018 with Dreadnought in Detroit, and then became friends. And so like it's kind of like already having this sort of like established relationship with people here, which is awesome, you know. And hopefully like there will be a scene that will continue.
I think it will. We're gonna be optimistic here. We're gonna knock on wood. It's gonna continue. It'll get back to normal.
Yeah, I mean, live music is never gonna die. You know what I mean? So, yeah.
Cool. Eric, I'm at the end of my notes. Do you have anything?
No other notes. No, I think that's about it. You have anything you want to share or add at the end of the interview? Anything?
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, like one thing I'll say is like, if anyone's struggling right now, like a lot of people are struggling and it's a really hard time, like economically and politically. And like, I've seen a lot of people overdose. I've seen a lot of people commit suicide. And like, I had one feeling was just, at one point during the pandemic, I watched World War II in color, which was amazing, by the way. Like that was just such an amazing job and so much work went into that. But just seeing like just the utter like destruction and detriment that those people went through, millions and millions of people went through for years, of like their loved ones dying and being mass murdered and, their cities being bombed constantly and this food lines and et cetera, et cetera. And, it's, shit might be bad right now, but it's like definitely not that bad. And like, at some point, like, that ended. And like, at some point, like this is going to end. And it's just like, just keep going 1 minute at a time and
put it in perspective. Yeah.
Yeah. Like one foot in front of the next, keep trying to do the next right thing, and if you are really struggling, like please just like reach out to somebody, and talk to somebody, because like a problem shared is like a problem halved, you know what I mean? And when you keep all that shit inside, like, eventually it boils over and festers, so like, I mean, I guess that's maybe the last thing I'll leave you with is, if you're watching this, just stay strong.
Yeah, I don't know if it's funny or depressing, but I've definitely like been through bad times and gone and watched World War II movies for the express intent of seeing other people going through worse shit that I'm going through and helping me to keep my life in perspective,
Yeah. I mean,
whether it's Band of Brothers or whatever, especially, or in the Pacific, I'm just like, oh yeah, okay, I'm good. Everything's good with my life now,
Yeah, there's this weird balance of relativity, because it's like, it's like not disregarding anyone's suffering, like a golden cage is still a cage, but also to try to have that, the juxtaposition of like, okay, like, shit is fucked, but also things are good. And like, trying to like separate them and, just be as positive as you can right now.
Cool. Well, I totally appreciate you coming on with us.
Yeah, thanks.
I always put the links at the bottom. So whether you're seeing this video tomorrow or 10 years from now, send me the links when the album comes out. I'll get it in the description. You can always click through. And I'm pretty good about putting a lot of the stuff that, we talk about in the description, so everybody who's watching, you can just check it out and let your fingers do the walking, do some surfing, check some stuff out.
Yeah, cool. Thanks a lot.
Okay. Thanks everybody. Bye.
Yeah, thanks for tuning in. Yes.
Okay.